The 2024-25 Premier League campaign is on the horizon. In preparation, we're previewing every single team and discussing how they'll shape up over the next campaign. We take a look at the transfer business conducted by the teams so far and offer suggestions of who else they should move for before the season gets started. Today, we cover Aston Villa. Following our top four finish, we discuss how Emery's side will adjust for European football and how their busy transfer window sets them up for continued success. This is our 2024-25 season preview for Aston Villa. Alright, let's talk about Aston Villa, then the second of our 24-25 Premier League previews. We'd like to start by talking about last season then, and for Aston Villa, what a fantastic campaign it was last season, Harry.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think for the last couple of years, everyone has thought that Aston Villa had this in them in terms of, the recruitment was very smart. It feels like since Grealish left, everyone has been waiting for this kind of season from Aston Villa, getting into the Champions League. They were quite disappointed. It was Conference League, it was top 8, it was top 10, but finally made the right deals and made that charge with Unai Emery into the top 4. A brilliant, brilliant campaign. I mean, looked incredible at times, like unstoppable. Went away and beat Arsenal. Took points off big sides, beat almost everybody. An absolutely stellar campaign.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, Unai Emery, the integral part of that. And I think a key moment of their rise was sacking Steven Gerrard for many reasons. But yeah, last season, as you say, really strong campaign. 4th in the Premier League table. That, of course, gives them Champions League football this season, which is phenomenal for Aston Villa. It's the first time they've been in there for a long time, I believe. So going to be interesting to see how they get on in that this season. And that's something that we've got to consider when talking about what they're doing in the transfer market, when looking at who they should perhaps move for next, is how do they step up from being a very good Premier League team and really taking the fight to teams like Arsenal and then going and playing in the Champions League, where it is just a little bit more difficult. And if they want to go deep in that competition, I do think the new format does help them in that regard, because you're not going to have to play, they're not going to be seeded in a group with just difficult teams. They will have some easier ties in there. However, they do still seed as a pot 4 team due to their lack of European football in the last 5 years. Obviously, they were in the Conference League last season, but I don't think that gives them enough coefficient. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they get on. So let's talk more on last season. How did they overachieve to that degree? Was it an overachievement, or was that what the squad merits?
I mean, I think it's hard to tell. In terms of an overachievement, we'll find out this season, because you look at Newcastle, I think it's fair to say they overachieved because they had a stellar season, and then this season they're falling away back to where
I would say you've got mitigating circumstances there, though. Because obviously Newcastle have had so many injuries this year. It's been quite difficult to tell.
Yeah, I know, but everyone's had injuries. But I think this is a big test of Aston Villa this season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think most of it, comes down. The quality on the pitch was phenomenal. Watkins, had between 30 goal contributions, which was, lethal numbers.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing for me was the setup. The way Unai Emery plays football, the 4-4-2 was well structured. Everything was brilliant, defensively solid. Punished teams when they were on the attack. Looked, every department was so solid and got the job done. That's what they did. They, if anything, took it back to basics and just did what you needed to do to win football games: defend and score. And it was a really well run team there by Unai Emery, I think, last season.
Yeah, and he's always shown this ability, and it's why I'm really excited to see them in the Champions League this season. I was disappointed they didn't win the Conference League. I thought they would, because that's Emery's, bread and butter, winning knockout competitions, because he sets up so well. I don't know what happened to that Olympiacos game, whether they just underestimated them, I'm not sure. But going into the Champions League, they definitely won't underestimate anyone in that competition. So I'm very intrigued to see what happens there, because obviously, like Villarreal under Emery's stewardship went into the semi-finals because they played such disciplined, such compact football, and they took it to some of the best sides in the world and gave them a really good game. Unfortunately, Liverpool in that season were just a little bit too much of a stretch for them. So let's move into this season then, 24-25. I think there'll be a lot of optimism around Villa Park. Their kit looks incredible, by the way. Saw that release the other day. That's done the video for it as well. If anyone hasn't watched that, I implore you to go and watch that. But yeah, things seem to be really positive, and the transfer market, I think, is definitely aiding in that. Let's start with the outgoings then, because it's been a weird summer with Villa because of the FFP restrictions. So we'll look at some of those FFP signings first, because first they sold Tim Iroegbunam to Everton for 12 million. Not a bad sale at all, and obviously that helped get the Dobbin deal over the line. I think it's a nice bit of money for Villa to get for a player that they weren't going to use.
Yeah, 100%. It makes sense, and as you say, it was part of the whole Dobbin agreement. I mean, I look at this list for Aston Villa. Half these transfers are purely just FFP nonsense, to be completely honest. I don't even think some of the signings are going to play. I don't think some of the sales were ever going to play. It is purely just shifting the money, really. But
yeah, I think Iroquois though will do well at Everton. I think it's a good addition for Everton. I just don't think that he was ever going to get in the Villa side.
Yeah, I mean, I think Villa have run out because they've lost a decent centre midfielder and bought Lewis Dobbin.
But obviously that did help them get a deal, which you're going to talk about in a while, of another Everton player. And then obviously Amari Kellyman to Chelsea for 22 million. Obviously you don't want to lose a youth prospect, but I don't think he was realistically going to start for Villa this season or even the season after. I'm still not sure on his level because I don't think he's incredible. So 22 million, and it helped get the Martin deal over the line. Not bad.
Another one. Kellyman is nowhere near 22 million. That is an extortionate price to pay. But once again, we know what all these deals are. It's another one of those.
Yeah, and if the Premier League have got any issues with it, it's their own rules that have created this problem for clubs. So I personally don't see any issues with it. Yes, the price is slightly inflated, but that's what's going to happen. Then we've got Douglas Luiz. Now this is the first really interesting one. 50 million for Douglas Luiz. Obviously, we'll touch on the players traded the other way in a moment. But do you think this is a big loss for Aston Villa, or do you think they have recovered it nicely?
I personally think it's a decent sale. To be completely honest, I think 50 million is a good price for Douglas Luiz. I think he's a brilliant footballer, but he can't. With 50 million, you can replace what he brings. I feel. I think 50 million is a very good fee. To be completely honest, I think Juventus may have overpaid slightly there. If anything, I think, as I said, he's a good footballer, but with 50 million, Villa can easily replace him, and even his things like his penalty taking ability. You've got Ollie Watkins. I don't think Villa will miss him too much next season.
No, I mean, they've literally spent that exact 50 million on his replacement, and again, very good stuff. So I don't think Douglas Luiz is a huge loss there. And then you've got the loan deal for Felipe Coutinho to Vasco da Gama. I included that because I find that quite amusing that he's still on the books there. What a momentous failure that was. Unfortunately, it just didn't ever work out for Coutinho. He had a great loan spell, then it just didn't happen. And then Callum Chambers has left for Cardiff City on a free transfer, so that is a shame.
He had a good year.
He did. He did have a great time. Let's look at incomings then, because that is the more exciting aspect of this. Lewis Dobbin, we mentioned him slightly there. 12 million. I don't really see him starting, but he's an option for. He's not crap.
He is.
He's a good young talent. I just don't think he's going to be a Champions League level talent, which then begs the question why they've signed him. But
exactly.
I think again, it's FFP. It's only 12 million, and they sold Iroquois for the same fee, and It's part of it. Up next, Ian Martson. Now, this is a really good signing. 44 million, going to come in at left back. What does Martson bring that Villa lacked?
I think he's a very, very good player. I think his attack, the way he's an attacking fullback, and I find it interesting. Obviously, we know that Emery has that one attacking fullback, one defensive fullback. So sticking with the fullback on the left hand side, obviously. Alex Moreno was brilliant last season, but he was injured for most of it, so there's concerns there. And we know that Emery doesn't think Digne's the best left back in the world.
Be mental if he did.
That would be mental if he did. But I think Martin, he's an upgrade on both of them. I think 44 million is a little bit on the steep side, but when it doesn't really matter because Chelsea then gave you 22 million of it back for Kellyman. So I don't think the fee. That's the problem. The transfer fee doesn't worry them anymore because the way these transfers are being made. So it's hard to evaluate the money spent on a player because they haven't really spent 44 million on Martin.
I think the way you can look at it is it's 20 million for Ian Martson,
which is a lot, which is
a fantastic price because I think Dortmund were quoted at 35. Obviously, Villa have on the spreadsheet spent 10 million more than that. But obviously, with the Kellyman deal, they do make a lot in profit. So I don't think that. I don't think that's a bad signing at all. I think 20 million is a really good price to play for a left back who was in the Champions League final last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund. A player who we saw in the Championship with Burnley can be a fantastic attacking fullback. So I'm very excited to see how he gets on in a Villa shirt. I think he's a really nice addition as they look to push on. Up next then, a part of the Douglas Luiz deal was Samuel Illing Jr. for 14 million and Enzo Barrenechea for 8 million. The two players I've not seen a whole lot of. They were quite decent for Juventus at times, especially Illing Jr. I think that's a really nice signing. Whether he can have the impact on the Premier League, I think is going to be the big question because obviously they do have a big boots to fill, because we've not spoken about Moussa Diaby yet because it's not confirmed. It may be confirmed by the time this goes out, but he is going to Al Ittihad for like £60 million. So,
oh no.
So
it's, I think that's an absolute robbery from Villa. Again, the Saudis overpaying.
I think Diaby was good, but
it's not 60 million.
No, definitely not 60 million. But Illing Jr., 14 million, I think that's a fairly safe bet.
Yeah.
The worst that happens is you're going to sell him for the same price, I think.
As you say, both these deals from Juventus are safe signings because A, they gave you all the money back again, and B,
more.
Yeah, exactly, loads more. B, if they don't play very well, oh no, that's 20 million that didn't go well on two players. If they play well, absolute bargain. So for Villa, it's good if it works, good if it doesn't.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Borena Chea as well, a decent player. Whether or not, again, whether he'll adapt to the Premier League in the way that Villa want him to is going to be another question. I think there's going to be a lot of competition for places in that Villa midfield, but that's exactly what you want as they push in all competitions this season.
Well, that's the thing. This definitely feels like Villa planning to play in 4 competitions. I wouldn't expect to see these guys starting in the big Premier League games, but if they've had to go to Real Madrid on a Wednesday, these guys might start against Ipswich at home.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that there. Up next then, and I think this is really nice business from Aston Villa, Ross Barkley for £6 million. Why are you not a fan of that?
Because I like Ross Barkley. I think he's a good player. But his first spell at Villa didn't go very well. He was okay, but it didn't go very well.
They had that big game where they beat Liverpool 6-2 and he was great in that.
He was great in that, and I remember him scoring at St Mary's as well in the Carabao Cup. To beat Southampton, but that was about it. Yes, he was good at Luton, but to look at him playing well in that Luton side and to think that he's then good enough to go and join Champions League side Aston Villa, I don't understand it. For me, it would have made sense if Barkley had been picked up by a mid-table side. If a Crystal Palace, if a Fulham had gone and picked him up. For Villa to go get him, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure he's going to be able to bring the quality that they need.
That's really interesting. I think I come from a very different angle as someone who watched a fair bit of Ross Barkley last season. I think he had a really strong campaign, and when you consider how porous that Luton side were at times, for him to still put up the numbers that he did and look so comfortable in possession but also out of possession, which is something we've not seen from Barkley before, as he's transformed himself from more of an attacking midfielder, creative midfielder, into a bit more of a playmaker. And I think playing that defensive midfield role, obviously he's going to be back up to Boubacar Kamara, so I don't think it's a loss for me. I think it's a fairly safe bet. £6 million on a backup defensive midfielder who has been at the club before, is English to fulfil those homegrown quotas. I don't think it's a bad addition at all. I think it's a decent signing for Villa. Again, we'll see out on the field whether he does well, but I think for £6 million, you can't really complain about that signing. Up next, it's Cameron Archer for 17 million. So I think this was them exercising a buyback thing with Archer, which I find interesting because then it pretty much makes it like a loan deal, because they sold him to Sheffield United for 10 million, something like that, and they've bought him back for 17. So it's just a really expensive loan.
Yeah, I hate this one, and we can talk about. I think that we can put them both under the same umbrella. The Jaden Philogene Bidace deal as well. I hate when clubs do this. You've basically you've sold on this player, told him you don't want him anymore, and then after a year or a couple of years, you've gone, oh, please come back. Yeah. I don't like that. I don't. I mean, to be honest, in the first place, I don't. I mean, it sums up again. Why did they let them go in the first place? It's bizarre to me. Again, I have massive questions because I don't think Archer was. I know Sheffield United were absolutely terrible last season, but Archer did okay.
Yeah.
And Philogene Bidace was quality for Hull, but that's in the Championship. That is nowhere near the level that Aston Villa are going to be playing next year.
See, that's where I disagree. I think that if you look at the players that have come up from the Championship into the Premier League recently, they've all shown that it's not that big a jump to cross. And I think that, Adam Wharton, a great example, looked more than comfortable playing it for Crystal Palace, more than comfortable playing for England. I don't think that the Championship is as far off as a lot of people do. I think that Philogene, his skills will translate over into the Premier League. I find that the deal's weird, but equally, he's agreed to go back. Hull accepted offers from loads of different clubs. He wanted to go back to Aston Villa, so
I told him to shove out with the sun don't shine.
Over Barcelona, so make of that what you will.
That's bizarre.
But I think that says more about Barcelona.
He does want his wages.
He does actually want to get paid, yeah. But yeah, I think it's a good signing. I don't think either of them are going to rip up trees, but you never know. I think it's going to be interesting to see Rodgers and Philogene Bidace competing for that left-hand side. I think that Cameron Archer will likely be the backup now to Watkins, because we're going to touch on John Duran in a moment. But yeah, I think they're okay signings. Well, I don't think they're going to be world beaters, but they're going to do the job.
I think, they are backups at the end of the day. I mean, Morgan Rogers has been tearing up in pre-season, and
that doesn't tell everything, but it is a good sign.
Yeah, it is a good sign, and we know how good the likes of Bailey and Watkins were last season. So yeah, they're playing bit part roles. It definitely feels like Villa are raising the floor of this team rather than going for those ceiling-raising signings.
Yeah, and well, at that point, so this was Monday, they'd done all that business. We were like, well, they've won the transfer window. And then, on Tuesday, was it Tuesday, Monday? I can't remember. They go and announce Amadou Onana for £50 million. For me, this is arguably signing of the window in the Premier League.
Oh,
I think he's quality. I think he's so quality. You look at what Villa might have lacked last season. I think a bit of it was legs in midfield. Someone that can drive that ball forward. So you had Douglas Luiz in there. He's a bit more of a playmaker. Kamara can carry the ball, but considering he's more of a defensive midfielder, you don't really want him carrying that ball through lines of pressure. But Onana is a great box-to-box midfielder. He's good with the ball at his feet. He's really good at breaking up opposition attacks as well, which Villa, considering how they are so aggressive in possession, can sometimes get caught on the counter. I mean, they do play a ridiculously high line, and that does seem to work for them. But I think that having Onana in there, who for me was incredibly solid in an Everton team that probably aren't the best in the league. I mean, if you take away their point deduction, they would have been closer to like 12th. But still, I don't think they're one of the stronger teams in the league. I think he really impressed.
I think he's a good player. I don't know. I think it makes sense. He as I said, he pretty easily replaces what you would miss with Douglas Luiz. It's the same fee. It makes sense. It's a transfer that makes sense.
I think it's a really good signing. I'm very much looking forward to watching him play for Aston Villa next season. Obviously, we've spoken about Moussa Diaby as well on outgoings. That looks like it's going to be 60 million. That is a huge fee they're going to get for him.
Villa are laughing.
Yeah, I think that's because I don't think there's a huge gulf between him and Leon Bailey. So I think Bailey will get more minutes, which I think is good for him. And yeah, Diaby off to Al Ittihad. And then there was another John Duran. Let's talk about John Duran, because I think there has been some issues around John Duran at Villa. A lot of Villa fans don't particularly like his attitude, don't like stuff like that. He's deleted Aston Villa out of his Instagram bio. I think the other day he posted a picture with like the West Ham Irons like emoji as the caption. That then got changed, obviously. But does it look like Duran is off? Or is there a one back?
This backup strike situation at Villa over the last couple of years has been ridiculous. Had Cameron Archer, decided he wasn't good enough, sold him, bought Duran. Duran has been so up and down. Obviously, he scored the dramatic goal against Man City to win that. Was it win that game or draw that game? I think it was to win the game. It was a draw.
Yeah,
that happened. And then it's been such a weird few months. And now they brought Cameron Archer back. It looks like he's going to go. But if he does, it is just a massive... I mean, it's probably the first... It's an uncharacteristic failure from Villa's kind of recruiting team to sell Archer, bring in Duran, just to swap them over 2 years later.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think Duran was a good signing. I think clearly he's highly rated. We know Chelsea were looking at him at one point. We know West Ham have shown interest this window, and I think it genuinely would have been a good signing for West Ham. However, if these attitude issues that seem to plague his career continue, that could end up being yet another unmitigated disaster.
Yeah, I mean, it's my biggest
West Ham,
problem with players is a poor attitude.
Yeah,
and if he has got a bad attitude, he will go nowhere.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think he's a really very good player, and if West Ham do buy him and he can improve on that attitude, he does buy into what Julian Lopetegui's looking to do next season, then I think that could be a good signing. I don't think he's going to start over Watkins anytime soon, and while he does look good, I don't think Archer is much off him. So no. Yeah, I think Villa will be fine without him. So let's have a look then at the squad screen. We'll put that up on screen for all of you. So obviously Villa have played mainly a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1. I've put in a 4-2-3-1 on this screen just to make it a little bit easier to display, because yes, we could see Bailey playing as like a second striker just off of Watkins. We could see McGinn playing out on the right hand side like we did last season, but just to put them in their natural positions makes it a little bit easier to look through. So in goal, obviously you got Martinez and Olsen. Do you think they'll look to sign another goalkeeper? I mean, obviously they've always got youngsters that can be those third choices.
Yes.
So they're probably going to be all right there. I don't think Olsen's a great backup, but it's not a problem issue, is it? You can just get on with having Robin Olsen as your backup. Back four then, we'll start at right back. You've got Ezri Konsa and Matty Cash. Now, Konsa seems very, very happy at the club, seems to be a really nice part of Emery's side. Matty Cash, though, potentially looking at moving on. I've seen him linked away. Do you think it'd be smart for Villa to cash in on Cash?
I don't know. I don't think it affects them. If he wants to stay, I don't think it affects them either way, really.
Okay, fair enough. I do think they'll start to look towards having, because obviously you've said in the past Emery likes to have an attacking and defensive fullback at both fullbacks. It does seem to me like with the Martson deal now, already having Moreno on that side, that he is going to have attacking left backs and defensive right backs. Now Cash doesn't really suit that system.
No.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did look to move him on this summer. I think this is probably the last year you're going to get decent money for him, so if they can sell Matty Cash, I don't think that's a bad deal at all. Right centre half then, Villa are a little bit short on options now, because obviously Konsa can play there, but if you've lost Cash, then you've only got one right back. So something to think about there is a centre half who can play right back. Diego Carlos will start there. He has had a few injury concerns, but if he stays fit, he's a very, very good centre half.
Yeah, he is a very, very good centre half, but as you say, I mean, some mental injury. Obviously, in his first season, did his ACL and missed the majority of the season. It was an absolute mess for Diego Carlos. They'll hope he stays fit, but he feels like one of those players that constantly has an injury issue. Even if he's playing, he's either got a niggle or he's got something taped up. That is a situation that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, fair enough. And then at left centre half, you've got Pau Torres, starter for me, one of the top centre backs in the league last season. And then obviously Tyrone Mings as backup. Now he spent all of last season out with, was it ACL as well?
Yeah, I think so.
So a lot of ACLs impacting Villa's defence. So that was a shame for me to see no Tyrone Mings, but coming back, it's going to feel like a new signing in a sense, because they're going to have a bit more availability at defensive in their back four. In at left back, then you've got Martson, Moreno, and Digne. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Digne leave before the start of the season. I think that Martson and Moreno is a really nice rotation because they're both very attacking fullbacks. So that it's not like you've got much manoeuvrability in there in terms of, you can put a different player in and look different tactically, but actually having two players that can play the same role means that rotation is going to be a little easier because it's not going to be so different if Martin's playing Champions League than Moreno's playing Premier League. Let's have a look at the midfield then, because it's very full now, because you've got Boubacar Kamara and you've got Ross Barkley now as a backup. I think that's a nice rotation. You've got Onana, Chair and McGinn, who can all play central midfield. You've got Yuri Tielemans, who can play central midfield or a bit of an attacking midfielder role. You've also got Jacob Ramsey, who has been linked with a move away to Tottenham and potentially Lo Celso in return. Would that be a good signing, or is Ramsey much better than Lo Celso? What do you think?
I think Ramsey's much better. Again, for me, it'll be a bizarre one. You lose a homegrown player just to do practically an FFP deal. I think purely Lo Celso's linked because Emery likes him, but realistically, I think Ramsey's better.
Yeah, I think he is a better player. I think if you can get that FFP profit, and if they need it, then that would be a smart deal to do. If you don't need FFP profit now, though, for me, the Diaby sale could be enough to sort that out. So I don't think it's a necessity to sell Jacob Ramsey. I think he's a really talented player, and that would be a big loss. Out on the wide areas then, on the right flank, you've got Leon Bailey and Emiliano Buendia.
He's still there.
What's happened to Buendia?
I don't know. I didn't realise he was still there. I thought he'd gone.
Apparently he's still on the books at Aston Villa. I'm not sure whether he has been sold and it's not updated on the Premier League app yet, but I didn't see anywhere saying he's been released. I've not seen him in a very long time, which is a shame. I think he's such a talented player. Obviously, at Norwich, he was the standout in the Championship in their title-winning season in 2021, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a shame he hasn't really blossomed into the player a lot of people expected him to be. I think he has struggled a lot with injuries and adapting to living in Birmingham. But I think there is still hope there for Buendia.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see whether that can come to fruition this season. I'm also not sure if he fits the Emery system very well. Obviously, Bailey can quite comfortably play as a second striker off of Watkins, whereas Buendia is a much more traditional wide player. So you have got a bit of difference there. However, I think they could both play in the same team in theory if you play that 4-4-2. So... and hopefully there's still a future for Wendy. I still think he's a good player. And, well, he might have left. I've not seen anything that he has, though. So if he has, apologies. On the left-hand side, you've got Illing Jr., you've got Philogene, and you've got Dobbin. For me, and obviously Morgan Rogers as well, who I will add to that graphic. But so who starts there? Because you've got 4 options for one flank. Is Dobbin even in the running over there, or what's going on?
The problem is, you have to look at, if you think about the 4-4-2 shape, it'll be John McGinn on the left-hand side, but... I mean, because I don't think any of those start, to be completely honest. I
think Illing Jr. could.
Maybe. But I wouldn't expect to see any of the others start. I mean, I'm intrigued to see how Morgan Rogers does, if he can carry on his pre-season form. But realistically, we're probably going to see McGinn out on their left-hand side like we did last season.
McGinn was right-hand side, no? Because then they played, or at least, well, they've changed it. They changed it a lot throughout the season, but towards the end of the season, they had Watkins and Duran up front in a game. I think Rogers on the left-hand side, McGinn on the right-hand side. So it's very flexible what Emery wants to do with his tactic, and I think, again, they've got a lot of options now. Philogene can also play on the right-hand side. He's quite comfortable on either flank. I think he played quite a lot on the right-hand side for Hull last season. So, yeah, I think you've got options there with your wide players. I don't think Dobbin's really in the running for much first-team action. So, yeah. And then obviously leading the line, Watkins, Duran and Archer. We've already spoken about John Duran and why it looks like he's going to go, but he's a bit more on the fence than Diaby. I've not included Diaby in this because I think he may even be announced before we get this video out. So, I think Villa's squad's looking good. For me, as I've put on the graphic, the target area would be a centre-half / right-back. So let's have a look at a couple options for Aston Villa then. The first I'm going to name is the Brighton defender, Jan-Paul van Hecke. Now, I think this would be a pretty pricey move, obviously coming from within the Premier League. But if there's a time to try and go and prize away a Brighton asset, it would be this summer, where I think there's a little bit of unknown about the quality of Fabian Hertz. Obviously a very promising young coach, was great at St. Pauli, but he is in his early 30s. He's a very young coach. There's going to be some doubts over him. I wouldn't be surprised if I think that Van Hecke would be stupid not to consider a Villa move as an upgrade.
100%. I mean, obviously it might be different under Hertzler for Brighton, but for me these are two very different clubs because Villa give you consistency and Brighton are one of the most inconsistent teams in the Premier League, especially under Roberto De Zerbi. But obviously, as I said, it might be different under new management, but for me, this would make sense for Van Hecke to leave. The problem for Villa is they've spent a lot of money. They've had a big window so far. This would be their biggest dealer window, and they've already spent 70. Well, I say they've spent that money, but they've made it all back again, haven't they? So maybe it doesn't really matter. It would be a big move. It would be a pricey move, but it would be a very, very good move. Yeah, and then obviously we've put up his FBref profile. His passing numbers are incredible. He ranked in the 96th percentile across the top 5 leagues for progressive passes. He ranked in the 97th percentile for passes completed and the 82nd for progressive carries. So he's very good at getting that ball forwards. And if Villa are looking to play this nice possession football, which they tend to do, they form those wide triangles with the back line and the double pivot in there, and that's how they hold onto the ball, and then they look to spring forward into those attacking areas. So they've got a lot of pace and really strong attackers. So for me, Jan-Paul van Hecke would be a good signing. The other thing is I think it'd be possible to mould him into that right back and then obviously a right centre half in a situational back three if that's what they look to do. I think given what they're doing with their full back signings this summer, bringing in lots of attacking left backs, looking to move on Matty Cash, it looks to me that they might be going that way. And if they were trying to use Martin a bit more aggressively in possession and form a situational back three, I think Jan-Paul van Hecke's got what it takes to play that right back role because he's got that mobility. So that could be something else to explore. Now, another similar option and potentially a more doable option, Joe Gomez at Liverpool. Ooh, I like that.
Now, I think, obviously, Joe Gomez, Liverpool going for a little bit of a period of change now. I think Gomez is a very good player. I think he's not going to start, though, over Van Dijk. He's not going to start over Konate. Liverpool linked at the moment with Mark Guehi for £60 million. If they get that deal over the line, Joe Gomez is then 4th in line to start. for me, he'd be looking at getting more minutes somewhere else. And if you've got Aston Villa, where Diego Carlos is injury prone, where they might not have Matty Cash next season, we know Gomez can cover at right back, or can play right back, we know he could cover at left back. I think that versatility he would give Aston Villa could be really nice.
Yeah, 100%. I really like Joe Gomez as a player. I think he's a very decent player. And for Aston Villa, he would be a very reliable rotation. And I think this would be a really good deal. You can probably get him on the pretty cheap, and would make a lot of sense.
I still think he'd be around 40 million, surely. You'd think Liverpool would be that, surely.
For Joe Gomez?
Gomez is a good player.
I was about to say 15.
No. 15 million's very cheap
40
in
million
the modern market.
for Joe Gomez. I think he's good. I think he's worth 40 million.
I don't know. What's the most recent centre-half? Lenny Yoro for 50 million?
Yeah.
But he's got a year left on his contract. So that's something you've got to consider.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what Gomez's contract is. If that's only a year left, you've got, you're in the money there. But
£10.
Looking at his FBref profile, it is a sea of green. In the key stats for centre-halves, he hasn't got a single below the 50 percentile. So that's a really nice sign. He's quite a well-rounded defender. And obviously, Aston Villa put a lot of prowess on having big physical centre-halves, so you can defend those transitions nicely. He ranks in the 99th percentile for percentage of aerials won, up at 80%. That is really strong. And if you're looking to go and compete in the Champions League, where you're going to have these really technical sides, to have someone in there that is a bit aggressive, a bit of a brute, I think it'd be a really good signing. And for Gomez, it'd be a chance to finally get some starting Premier League minutes. He's
100%.
been always so highly rated, I think, at Liverpool, but he was never going to start over Konate. He was never going to start over Van Dijk. And if they do make a move for Mark Guehi this summer, or Jordan Teze from PSV, suddenly there's just not as many. It just doesn't look as promising for me.
Yeah, no.
So, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens over this summer. But I think Gomez or Van Hecke would both be great options for Villa. I think a right centre-half would be really nice. So, where are we? Sort of a rough prediction. Obviously, we'll have a predictions video out just for the start of the season. But a rough prediction. Where do you think Villa will be? Will they be in that top four? Or are they necessarily going to have that drop off?
It's hard to tell for me, because I think they'll drop off in something, which either means they're going to drop down the league, or they're going to get absolutely tanked in the Champions League. I'll be intrigued to see which one that is, just because of Emery's knockout nature. I worry they could tail off in the league, because they'll not prioritise the Champions League, but if they perform better and they play their stronger sides in that, they're going to falter. So I think domestically Villa will drop a little bit. I still think they'll be top 10, but and we'll probably in the Europe places, but I don't think they'll be top 4 again.
I completely agree. I could see not to the same extent, but I could see a Leicester in 16-17 where they didn't do anything in the league really, and ended up sacking Ranieri. Don't think Emery's going to get sacked, for the record, but I could see them doing that, and then they had that great Champions League run under Craig Shakespeare. They got to the quarterfinals and were taking on Atletico Madrid and stuff like that. I could see something like that for Villa next season. It's going to be interesting. I think the problem for Villa is you look at now the competition in the league. Chelsea might come back. You never know. Tottenham aren't really doing anything at the moment, but they might still be there. Newcastle, you think, will have a stronger season than they did last year. I hate to say this, but Manchester United's recruitment has to make them favourites to try and push into the top 4 now, surely, because they've got no excuses now. They're building a really good side. Dan Ashworth deserves plaudits for what he's doing there. Liverpool are a huge unknown this season. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a drop-off. I can't see them being right up there. They might get 3rd just because everyone between 3rd and 8th at the moment, no one wants to finish in the top 4. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next season. I still think Villa are one of the stronger teams in the division, but it's whether or not those other sides improve, because I think last season finishing 4th was a lot because it was due to the other sides falling off. Your usual top 4 suspects haven't been up there. So I think it's going to be really interesting next season to see whether Villa can maintain that bar, whether they can raise that bar. That would be incredible. Yeah. But I think the recruitment they've done so far is definitely going about it in the right way. And if they were to finish top 4 next season, I don't think it would be a huge surprise. I think that, again, there's a lot of change going on at other top 4 clubs or the big 6 clubs, other than City and Arsenal, who seem to be cemented top 2 now anyway. So I think Villa are are in a good position to still finish top 4, but I also would be surprised if we do see a little bit of a drop off. I
Yeah.
still think though they will finish in the European places. I can't see them being 8th or lower because I still think that Tottenham are worse. So yeah, that is everything for our Aston Villa preview. We'll be back tomorrow with Bournemouth. If you haven't checked out our Arsenal one yet, that will be on screen. And of course, we are getting close to the Premier League season, which is very, very exciting, and all the content that comes with that. I'm going to be previewing every Premier League club, so look out for those over the next 18 days. But that's everything from us today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.